What a beautiful call for healing. The poem that Tyler shared, titled Enough, is a powerful expression of anger and fear and exhaustion. As soon as I read it, I felt intimately connected to the author. Enough already, too much chaos. We have all felt that. We have all felt that lately. The colleague who wrote that, Jennifer Kelleher, UU minister, she also speaks to the inability to be fully who we are and who we yearn to be, that we want to be enough for this universe. She invites the reader into a glimpse into the rawness and a vulnerable interior of the heart. We want to be enough, but we're barraged by feelings of inadequacy in a complicated and overwhelming world of chaos and confusion. When we're overwhelmed, folks, when we're under stress and fear takes over, we turn against our best self. We start to attack, often ourselves or someone else, usually through shame, an inward attack, or blame, outward. With fear, we have innate survival techniques and skills that keep us evolving. It's good stuff, but we also have learned behavior. And it really requires a lot of courage and strength and self-awareness to stop the cycles of abuse toward ourselves and others. In this time of stress, my folks, we need to stop the cycle. We need to transform feelings from fear-based inadequacy, shame and blame, and need to believe in our self-worth, our inherent value, our inherent dignity, our inherent lovability. These are all part of our Unitarian Universalist first principle. I'll share a story to help illustrate what I'm talking about. It's a true story of a Buddhist monastery in Thailand. There is an ancient Buddha statue there. It is made of plaster, but it was much, much beloved. It had withstood many challenges and everyone loved it. It had been a source of inspiration through dark and challenging times. In the 1950s, though, it started to show some cracks. And the abbot took a flashlight and looked inside to see how bad the cracks were, how deep they were. He saw they were very deep, but he saw inside a reflection, a glimmer of gold. Surprise, they removed the layers of plaster and they found buried underneath the layers the largest Buddha gold statue in Southeast Asia. They think it was likely hidden with the plaster to protect it from centuries of invaders and attacks. The story provides a wonderful metaphor of how we cover ourselves with protective layers against threats with unhealthy behaviors such as shame and blame. Too often, we assume we are the coverings of plaster, that is who we are, that our protective layer is our authentic self, and we forget that our true self, the gifts, our golden interior, we forget our inherent worth and dignity. The Hindus have a similar metaphor set in their vision of God, of the Atman Brahman. The Atman is our inner essence, the true self. The Brahman is the unchanging nature of consciousness of the universe. And while too often we have protective layers of dust covering the Atman, our essence, our light, our true self, and we're separated from the Brahman. We have learned behaviors of protection that we begin to over-identify with fears and anger and controlling techniques. We get caught in a reactivity, pinball in a pinball machine, constantly reacting to the next thing, and we lose sight of who we are. Deep down, it's possible we're feeling indications of inadequacy, that we're not enough, not strong enough, not smart enough, not powerful enough, not enough energy to sustain our life. And we're exhausted. The poem Enough is a call for life, a life-sustaining energy. That energy is so important. Stress is exhausting. We get clogged up when we feel bad, when we feel inadequate and angry and frustrated. And that's when we start to engage in harmful behavior against ourselves and shame and against others with too much blame and judgment. There is a healthy sign, though. We have to be careful about that. That is when we feel remorse or guilt. That's different from shame and blame. Some people call it healthy shame. I'm not wild about that idea. I think it gets confusing. But really, it's our conscience serving an important role, a role that many religious teachings have emphasized. The sense of guilt is used to learn from our mistakes. We just have to be careful and not turn that into a harmful shame when we over-identify with bad behavior, believing that we are bad. There's a big difference between guilt or remorse and over-identifying to the point of believing we are inherently bad. When we do this, and too many of us have, we transform ourselves into bad people. We break down the bonds of community and relationship. And too often, frankly, religion has played a key role in teaching that we're bad people, inherently unworthy of God's love. We have to earn God's love and avoid God's wrath. This leads into a type of trance of unworthiness, buried beneath layers of plaster and dust. We forget that the gold is buried deep within, forget the precious nature of our being as lovable and loving, and we're unable to wake up to the power and the essence of who we are meant to be. There's a story of a couple. They were watching TV one day. On the news is a story about a man in a coma. The husband says to his wife, "If I ever get like that, pull the plug." So she gets up and unplugs the TV. When we find ourselves in a trance, we have to recognize we've been fed a type of unhealthy theology. In fact, I want to be very clear. This type of theology that talks about you have to earn God's love, that there's something inherently wrong with you, that's an abusive theology. We need to wake up to its destructiveness. It's a theology I cannot condone, and I find deeply problematic with its judgment and its cruelty. Theology that tears down rather than supports and builds up. A healthy and a vibrant theology that we need to be awake to, no matter whatever the faith is. It has to be life-sustaining. It has to be about creation and creativity, about beauty, about living into our best self through generosity and love. So how do we wake up? How do we wake up from a small, shame-based identity? How do we unplug from comas of smallness and unworthiness? How to reveal our gold? I have 3 suggestions. We wake up, we practice, and we have courage. First, wake up. Recognize the trance. See how much it has taken over our lives. It likely shows up as a harsh inner critic, triggering feelings of being small or selfish or anxious of letting people down. And I'm going to give you a little inside glimpse here that Jennifer Keller's, that beautiful poem, she knows that clergy are prone of being anxious about letting people down. It is a constant plague for us. which is why we're always saying that we practice this, and we need to practice healing, to practice loving ourselves into healing. There's a wonderful teaching from Buddhist teacher Tara Brach. She has an acronym for her teaching. It's called RAIN, RAIN. The acronym stands for recognize the emotion you're having. Recognize the emotion you're having. Allow it to pass through. Experience it. Don't suppress it. Don't toss it off. Let it pass through. Investigate the source with compassion and kindness. Investigate the source of the emotion with kindness and compassion. And natural wholeness emerges. RAIN, recognize the emotion, allow it to pass through, investigate the source with kindness and compassion. And natural wholeness emerges. As Tara Brach teaches, after the RAIN, transformation into the compassionate awareness of who we really are emerges. But there's an important caveat here. We have to practice within community. That's how we build the beloved community, how we work to liberate all. A healthy Christian teaching, particularly found in the Gospel of John, teaches we are loved unconditionally. We are part of God and need to be connected to community. For Catholics, baptism since the Second Vatican is a welcome into community. It's not a washing away of sins. It's a welcome to community. What a beautiful shift in theology geared toward love and community. Within Judaism, the Torah's most important teaching, I've been told, is found in 2 verses. Love your neighbor as yourself, in Leviticus 19:18. And you shall love your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might. Deuteronomy 6:5. The Jewish commandments, I am told by my Jewish friends, are simple and they're complicated, of living a healthy and a whole life. They say love is the measure for a Jewish practice. Every mitzvah, every prayer is done and said with the intention of adding more love to this world, of opening the heart, of connecting to the divine essence that is hidden in all things. Love is the measure for whatever practice. Third, courage. Stay with it. Recognize how we're attached to our stories of who we are. We have a cognitive bias toward confirming our narratives of who we are, even if that narrative is the false veneer, is the dust and the plaster. We like to hold on. So instead, keep replacing it with the ideas of how good a person we are. The courage is also going to be needed to practice authenticity in community because there's going to be conflict. Guaranteed change brings conflict, community brings conflict. Maybe it's about the type of car. Who knows? But there are moments when we learn from each other in conflict, when we learn by each other by being in relationships. We have to stay with us in these learning moments and have courage. Viktor Frankl, the wonderful teacher who came out of the World War II, he said in our pinball of reactivity, between the trigger and the response is a space, a moment to choose. When we step back, when we disconnect from the emotion, we experience it and we learn from it. Such wise words from so many of our world religions, Buddhism and Christianity and Hindus and Jews. What about Unitarian Universalist teachings? What does our own beloved faith teach us about uncovering our inner gold, of removing the dust that is separating us from authentic relationship? Our faith is about love, a love that binds us in unity, a love that is universal, giving all inherent worth and dignity. And our faith, it teaches us to wake up. grounded in spiritual growth and a search for truth and meaning, to wake up. Those are our third and fourth principles, grounded in spiritual growth and search for truth and meaning. Our faith teaches that we need to practice and stay grounded in justice, equity, and compassion, and world community of peace, liberty, and justice for all. That's our second and fifth principles. And our faith also says we need to have courage as we are grounded in the interdependent web of existence, our seventh principle. So, from me to you, may you find your inner gold. May you know it to be true and precious. May you keep it free of false coverings of plaster and dust. Keep it polished with love and compassion. Share your gold with the world. Wake up, practice, have courage. Amen, my folks. Amen, and blessed be.